I've noticed we're losing subscribers. Not the YouTube kind, but the kind that swore they'd be in my life forever. Funny how that works. One day you're surrounded by people who claim to love you, and the next, you're watching them walk away like you were just another phase in their lives. By the way, if you're here, do me a favor, subscribe. It's free, and unlike some people in my life, you won't regret sticking around. My wife betrayed us all, and my kids made sure she never forgot it. I thought my life was stable. A loving wife, 2 wonderful kids, and a peaceful home in the countryside. But I was wrong. So wrong. It all started with a rabbit. A few days ago, my kids found a small bunny in the yard. Their little hands clutched it as they ran inside, eyes full of hope, begging to keep it. But we already had pets, and I knew a wild rabbit wouldn't survive with us. I gently explained that it needed to return home to its family. My kids, though heartbroken, agreed to let it go. Since I was busy with work, I asked my wife to release the rabbit in the thorn bushes at the far end of our land, the safest place, away from predators. It was a simple request. A logical one. Minutes later, my children stormed into the house, screaming in horror. My wife followed, shrugging, saying, "It's not that bad." Their words shattered me. Mama made us let the bunny go in the middle of the yard, and a hawk took it. The sheer panic in their little voices was unbearable. They had watched, helpless, as a predator snatched their furry friend right before their eyes, the rabbit's terrified squeals echoing in their ears. I turned to my wife, my voice steady but sharp. "Why didn't you listen to me?" She scoffed. "It's just a rabbit. They'll get over it." But they didn't. They were devastated. They locked themselves in their rooms, refusing to speak to her. And then the nickname was born. Bunny Killer. At first, it was just a whisper. Then, it became their defiant battle cry whenever they were angry with her. She tried to punish them, to discipline them, but the name stuck. Even worse, it started spreading. But none of that compared to what came next. One night, my eldest child, only 5 years old, came to me, small hands clenched into fists. She hesitated before whispering, "Mama has a special friend. He comes over on Saturdays when you're at work." My heart stopped. I wanted to believe it was a child's misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew. I had seen the changes in my wife, her short temper, her sudden tears, the way she pulled away from me. So I did what I had to do. I installed hidden cameras in the house. I told no one. The footage confirmed my worst fear. She was cheating. And it got worse. She wasn't just cheating. She was pregnant. With his child. When I confronted her, she crumbled. She tried to gaslight me, to turn it on me, but the evidence was clear. And when our kids found out, they never forgave her. The betrayal wasn't just against me, it was against them too. The woman who was supposed to protect them had shattered their trust. And in the end, they only called her one thing. Bunny Killer. Now, I'm free. The divorce is final. And she lost everything. I hope her special friend was worth it. I thought the worst was over. I thought my wife's affair was the ultimate betrayal. But I had no idea. Her affair partner? A former colleague. A kid really, over a decade younger than her. Back when she still worked, she mentored him, guided him, and apparently decided to keep him close long after she left her job to be a stay-at-home mom. I never suspected a thing. Not until everything started unraveling. When I confided in my sister about the affair, she went pale. She told me she had seen my wife at a bar months ago, too close to a man who wasn't me. Touching, laughing, lingering hands on his back and shoulders. Nothing blatant, no kisses, but it was enough. Enough for my sister to feel uneasy. Enough for me to realize just how blind I'd been. I needed proof. Cold, undeniable proof. So I installed a GPS tracker in my wife's car and told her I was leaving town for a work trip. In reality, I was just a few miles away, waiting to see what she would do. And she didn't disappoint. That night, she didn't go to her usual bar. She went somewhere else, 20 miles further. And my sister, along with her husband, followed. They watched as she met up with him. What they captured on video shattered me. Her affair partner wasn't just some random fling. He was touching her stomach. Stroking it, smiling, whispering to her as if they were already a family. And that's when it all clicked. She was pregnant. And the baby wasn't mine. The mood swings, the secrecy, the way she had been pushing our kids away, it all made sense now. She was carrying his child. And the part that broke me the most? She didn't even try to hide her happiness when I told her I'd be gone for a few days. She was relieved to be rid of me. I felt sick. Disgusted. But more than that, I felt done. I left, ensuring my cameras were rolling while my sister and brother-in-law took my kids for a few days. And sure enough, my wife wasted no time. She called him over just hours after I left. He stayed the night. And while I won't go into the details of what they did, I will tell you what hurt the most. They laughed about me. They mocked me openly, planning their future while I was still in my home, thinking I had a wife and a family. She talked about their baby like I didn't exist. Like our kids didn't exist. And then she said the words that would haunt me forever. This isn't even my first affair. She had cheated before. Years ago. When she was 29. She was tired of being a good housewife. Tired of being around a dull man like me who made her feel old. And then she said it. The thing that made my blood go ice cold. If it weren't for his money, I would have left a long time ago. Even her affair partner seemed uneasy at that. He asked about our kids, what she planned to do with them. She laughed. He can have them. They like him more anyway. And I'll have my do-over kid. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. I closed my laptop, my hands shaking. I almost threw it across the room. Instead, I grabbed a beer, ate at a diner, and stared at the wall for hours. This woman, the woman I loved, had never loved me at all. She was a stranger. A parasite. A monster. And I was going to destroy her. The next morning, I walked into a law firm and asked for the meanest divorce lawyer they had. When I showed him the footage, he grinned like a wolf. "This is going to be fun," he said. And it was. A few weeks later, while I worked from home, my wife was served divorce papers. The sheriff hand-delivered them right into her manicured hands. My cameras caught it all. The way her face fell. The way her expression turned from confusion to horror to blind, feral rage. She stormed into my office, screaming, shaking the papers in my face. "You can't do this to me." I just smiled. "Oh, but I can." I knew my wife was capable of betrayal. I had seen it with my own eyes. But I didn't expect her to go this far. When she realized I wasn't backing down, she resorted to threats. "If you take me to court, I'll tell everyone you beat me," she spat. "I'll get you fired from your job." I just smiled. "Go ahead," I said. "Make up whatever lies you want. It won't save you." Her face changed. Her confidence wavered. "How much do you know?" she whispered. I stared at her. "Enough." I told her to get out. She refused. She screamed that the house was as much hers as it was mine. Then she stormed into the bedroom and locked herself inside. I wasn't worried. I had cameras rolling. And I watched in real time as she pretended to have a breakdown, crying, throwing things, pulling at her hair. Then she picked up her phone, composed herself, and called the police. She was smiling the entire time. She told them she was in danger. That she feared for her life. That I had attacked her. She had no idea I was watching every second of it. I left the front door open and calmly waited for the cops to arrive. They entered ready for war, hands on their holsters, scanning for signs of violence. But the house was spotless. No overturned furniture. No bruises. No proof. Then my wife burst from the bedroom, sobbing, grabbing at an officer's vest like she was a damsel in distress. "He's a monster," she wailed. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply turned to the officers and said, "Would you like to see something?" They hesitated. Then nodded. I pulled out my laptop. First, I showed them the clip of my wife admitting she would make up lies to ruin me. Her face drained of color. Then I played the footage of her calmly walking from my office to the bedroom. No panic. No fear. Finally, I showed the most damning piece of evidence, her own recorded phone call to the police. Every single word. The cops turned to look at her. Her mouth opened and closed. She tried to argue, to twist the story, but it was over. She was the one in handcuffs. As they dragged her away, she sobbed like a child. I just sat there shaking my head. This was the woman I had once loved. Once she was gone, I canceled every single one of her credit cards. The ones in my name. I cut off access to our joint bank account. She had money saved up, plenty of it, but she was on her own. The next day she showed up for her car. But I had already packed her belongings in suitcases and left the key on the seat. She wasn't stepping foot inside my house ever again. Then her parents came knocking. They had only heard her version of the story, the same lies she fed the police. Her father, a huge, intimidating man, looked ready to tear me apart. But I simply asked, "Did you know your daughter was having an affair?" Silence. "Did you know she's pregnant?" His eyes widened. His reaction told me everything. Without another word, I pulled out my laptop. And I showed them everything. The affair. The lies. The threats. Her parents sat in stunned silence. Then, right in front of me, they called their daughter. She picked up immediately. "Sweetie," her mom said, voice trembling. "We know everything." My wife started sputtering excuses, but they cut her off. "We're standing right next to him," her father growled. "We saw the tapes." And then they said something I didn't expect. "You are no longer our daughter." They disowned her. Right then and there. The call ended. She tried calling them back. They ignored her. And when they returned home, they found she had trashed their house in a fit of rage before leaving. My ex-mother-in-law was in tears. I still consider my ex-in-laws family. They still see their grandchildren. But my ex-wife? She's dead to all of us. A few days later, she came back with AP to collect the rest of her things. He wouldn't even enter the house. And she refused to look me in the eye. She knew. She lost. The final battle begins. While my wife was still packing up the last of her belongings, my brother-in-law kept a close eye on AP from the window, just in case. Then the kids came home. She didn't even look at them. Our youngest cried for her, reaching out with tiny hands, but she ignored him. She just kept shoving clothes into her bags like they didn't exist. Before leaving, she made sure to get one last jab in. She tore our wedding photos from the walls and hurled them onto the floor, shattering the glass. She stared at me while doing it, waiting for a reaction. I gave her nothing. Realizing she wouldn't get the satisfaction she wanted, she collected the last of her bags and walked out the door. After she was gone, reality hit me. I couldn't care for my kids alone. I had no reliable childcare and I couldn't afford to take too much time off work. So I called my elderly mother. She came immediately. At the same time, I scheduled DNA tests. I had no doubt my children were mine, but after everything, I had to be sure. The results came in. Both of my kids were mine. I also got tested for STIs, thankfully negative. The desperate offer. About a week later, my wife arrived at my door again. But this time she wasn't angry. She was negotiating. If we both agree to a clean divorce, she said, we split everything 50-50ths. I almost laughed in her face. She really thought I was that stupid. I refused. She argued, tried to reason, but then she admitted something. She had looked into the actual laws and realized they weren't on her side. We had met, married, and built our life in a state where adultery had consequences. She knew she was going to lose big unless I agreed to settle. I just shook my head. You betrayed me. You betrayed our kids. You betrayed your own parents. Everyone. Then I slammed the door in her face. She walked away silently. The divorce battle. Months later, we faced each other in court. By then, she was very visibly pregnant. But AP? Nowhere to be found. She tried to lie to the judge, of course, but I came prepared. Every single time she opened her mouth, I played a video proving her wrong. She was done. So she switched tactics. She started stalling. She refused to cooperate, dragged out negotiations, and made insane demands. She wanted half my savings, a huge list of my personal assets, for me to buy out her half of the house, despite never paying into it. Meanwhile, I was fighting for full custody and removal of her name from the house deed. She kept trying to manipulate the system, but the system wasn't on her side. This is an at-fault state. She cheated. She tried to frame me. And the court saw everything. In the end, she lost everything. She walked away with only her personal belongings. A fair financial settlement, considering the circumstances. The car I had previously bought her, I signed over the title without hesitation. But most importantly, I got full custody. She hadn't once tried to contact our kids during the divorce. Not once. So the judge gave them to me entirely. The house is now fully mine. And I am completely free of her. The aftermath. Even after the divorce, she still tried to spread lies about me. But my sister made sure everyone knew the truth. Once our mutual friends saw the evidence, they cut her off immediately. She and AP left town together. I don't know where they went. I don't care. For all I know, they sent them to freeze in Greenland. By now, she's probably had her do-over baby. I hope it was worth it. This isn't the kind of story I ever expected to share. I just started out talking about my wife releasing a bunny where a hawk could catch it. But maybe, in the end, I was the hawk. The final blow. A divorce like this? It's a battlefield. It's like having a signed prenup against you, except you never agreed to one. But when I said I hired the meanest lawyer in town, I meant it. The man was a bear and a shark combined. My ex-wife walked away with a $660,000 settlement. The car I bought her 2 years ago for $50,000, completely paid off, title signed over. She could have had partial custody of our kids. But then the court saw the video. The one where she said, on camera, that she didn't care about them anymore. After that, she didn't even bother fighting for them. She just gave up. Signed away all parental rights without hesitation. Not out of love. Not out of guilt. Just because she wasn't getting her way. Her final desperate move. If you think the cops wouldn't have arrested her for lying, think again. This state doesn't mess around. She tried to paint me as a wife beater. She put on a psychotic smirk in court as she told the lie. But the police here? They don't play games. If the judge had believed her even for a second, I could have been arrested on the spot. But I had proof. Video. Witnesses. Everything. Her lies fell apart. And with that, she lost everything. The aftermath. Now she's gone. Out of my house. Out of my life. Out of our children's lives. Where is she? I don't know. I don't care. She could be freezing in Greenland for all I care. As for AP? He wasn't fired, just transferred. To where? Again, don't care. By now, my ex has probably had her do-over baby. I hope it was worth it. My own battle. But just because I won legally doesn't mean I won mentally. This whole thing has wrecked me. The betrayal. The lies. The gaslighting. And the worst part? My stepfather murdered my mother. Then took his own life. This entire nightmare has left me overwhelmed. Lost. I should be celebrating my freedom. But instead, I feel like I'm standing in the ruins of the life I thought I had. I don't know where I go from here. But one thing is certain. She's gone. And I will never let someone like her destroy me again. If there's one thing you take away from my story, let it be this. Small blue diamond, pay attention to red flags. Love can blind you, but the truth is always there. You just have to be willing to see it. Small blue diamond, protect yourself legally. Keep records, document everything, and never underestimate how far someone will go to manipulate the situation. Small blue diamond, know your worth. No one deserves to be lied to, betrayed, or discarded like nothing. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Small blue diamond, walk away from what no longer serves you. It might hurt. It might feel like you're losing everything. But in reality, you're setting yourself free. This was my journey, but I know I'm not alone. Has this story resonated with you? Have you experienced betrayal, gaslighting, or a toxic relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like if this story hit home. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because at the end of the day, we learn, we grow, and we move forward, stronger than before.